An unprecedentedly barbaric case, an abandoned house in the suburbs hiding horrifying secrets, a suspect who seemed innocent but concealed a terrifying truth behind a calm face, strange clues, victims vanishing without a trace, and a killer seemingly always one step ahead of the police. Behind every crime there's a plan, but this time, what made the culprit make a mistake? A case that's not just a crime, but a haunting story to the very end. Don't look away, because the deeper you go into this case, the more you'll realize the truth is more terrifying than you imagine. Let's step into a horrifying mystery right now. Hello. Welcome to my channel. On January 17, 2007, a horrifying event occurred at the Haidu Tavern, one of the famous dining spots in Guangzhou City, Guangdong Province, China. That evening, Mr. Leo Warner, a 40-year-old man, came to the tavern to enjoy dinner with a few friends. As a regular customer, he decided to order the herbal braised chicken, a renowned specialty of the tavern. Everything seemed normal until Mr. Warner picked up a piece of meat from his bowl and noticed a strange object with a bizarre shape. Initially, he thought it was just a bone, but upon closer inspection, he was horrified to realize it was a human finger, still with its fingerprint and nail. A chill ran down his spine, while his friends at the table couldn't hide their shock. Immediately, Mr. Warner called the tavern staff to investigate. At first, they were skeptical, thinking it was just a misunderstanding. But when they saw it with their own eyes, they couldn't deny the gruesome truth. Faced with this serious situation, the tavern manager quickly called the police. Less than 30 minutes later, authorities from Guangzhou City arrived at the scene. Guangzhou police quickly cordoned off the Haidu Tavern after receiving the news from the diner. Upon carefully examining the finger found in the dish, investigators discovered a small tattoo on the second knuckle. It was the first letter of a common Chinese surname, the letter T, possibly for Tan, Tao, or Tang. This was an important clue to help police identify the victim. Continuing to search Mr. Leo Warner's plate, police found not only the finger, but also some human tissue fragments mixed in the sauce. Forensic experts immediately used specialized tools to meticulously examine every part of the dish. The results made everyone shudder. The meat fragments weren't chicken as the diner imagined, but human tissue. Police immediately questioned the tavern staff initially. The staff seemed bewildered and denied any involvement. However, under deeper questioning, a kitchen staff member revealed a crucial piece of information. This dish was not prepared by the tavern itself. According to the tavern's procedure, the herbal braised chicken was ordered from an external food supplier and then delivered to the tavern daily based on orders. This also meant that the origin of the dish and its ingredients were not entirely under the tavern's control. Realizing the complexity of the case, police quickly inspected all remaining food in the tavern's kitchen. During the search, they focused most on the chicken dishes. To clarify, police opened all containers of pre-cooked chicken and found many strange cooked meat fragments mixed with the chicken. Initial forensic results indicated it was human flesh. This horrific scene stunned not only the police, but the entire tavern staff. Many trembled at the thought that they had unknowingly served human flesh to customers. Authorities immediately sealed the chicken storage area and took samples for testing. Through preliminary investigation, police determined this was not an ordinary mistake, but potentially related to a homicide. Notably, other dishes at the tavern showed no abnormalities. This further strengthened the theory that the source of the chicken from the external supplier was the key. Meanwhile, the victim's identity and the identity of the person who mixed human flesh into the braised chicken remained undetermined. Pressing questions arose. Who was the victim? Who was behind the processing facility supplying this chicken? And how many others had become victims or unknowingly consumed this horrific meat? After gathering sufficient evidence of human flesh in the braised chicken served by Haidu Tavern, Guangzhou police immediately deployed a special investigation team to the processing facility responsible for cooking this dish. They believed this was the origin of the human flesh being mixed into the chicken. However, what unfolded at the facility far exceeded the authorities' initial assumptions. The police convoy headed straight to an industrial park on the outskirts of Guangzhou City, where the processing facility was located. They carried a valid search warrant and deployed personnel to surround the area, ensuring no evidence or suspects could escape. Upon entering, the investigation team immediately split into smaller groups, inspecting the entire space from the raw material receiving area, freezers, preparation area, cooking area to the packaging area. Food crates in the warehouse were unsealed and randomly inspected. Every package, every tray was carefully examined by the police. Next, the investigation team requested the facility to provide records, import invoices, and certifications related to the raw material supply chain. According to the facility manager's report, they only imported whole chickens or fresh chicken meat from reputable, periodically inspected suppliers within the city. After receiving, they would perform preparation according to hygiene standards, cleaning, deboning, marinating with spices and herbs, then cooking at high temperatures and dividing into small portions for packaging. Finally, delivery would occur via specialized refrigerated trucks, ensuring the dish remained warm upon arrival at the tavern. What astonished the investigation team was that all raw materials found at the facility showed no traces or pieces of meat, other than chicken and common spices. Everything from freezers, stew pots, to the marination area was clean, clearly labeled, and contained no human flesh as initially suspected. Furthermore, the kitchen area was equipped with surveillance cameras, recording the entire cooking process around the clock. When reviewing the system's data, police found all activities were normal. Employees brought chicken for preparation, placed it on tables, put it into pots, added spices, and packaged the product. There was no sign of anyone sneakily adding other ingredients or performing any suspicious actions. Next, authorities detained several chefs, assistant chefs, and delivery personnel for detailed statements. They were interrogated separately to prevent collusion or concealment. The head chef stated he had been with the facility since its establishment and had never seen any suspicious behavior. He meticulously described the process of cooking the braised chicken, providing the recipe and cooking times. Assistant chefs and packaging staff gave similar testimonies, completely unaware of any human flesh being added. They seemed bewildered and outraged because this incident would directly affect their reputation and jobs. Background checks on all employees at the facility revealed no criminal records or connections to any criminal gangs. Everyone had stable employment histories and no involvement in other cases. After a stressful day of work, the investigation team left without finding any concrete evidence that the processing facility was where human flesh was mixed into the dish. Instead of confirming their initial hypothesis, they only encountered a series of new questions. If human flesh did not appear during processing, how did it end up in the chicken when it reached the customer? Had someone exploited a loophole during transportation or storage to insert human flesh? Did someone at the tavern have malicious intent, deliberately setting a trap or causing panic for customers and the facility? These questions temporarily pushed the investigation to a dead end. All clues about the origin of the human flesh seemed to have vanished at the processing facility. Simultaneously, police began to expand their investigation, more closely examining the transportation unit, delivery and receiving times, and the reheating process at Haidu Tavern. After collecting human tissue and small bone fragments mixed in the braised chicken at Haidu Tavern, the forensics team began the process of detailed testing and analysis. This was a crucial step to determine the victims' identities and find clues about the perpetrator. First, forensic experts used X-ray scanners and chemical methods to classify the found bone fragments. They realized there were many different small bone fragments, including some finger bones and small jaw bones. These fragments looked similar to chicken bones, but had human bone structure. Some bone fragments showed signs of being cut with a sharp knife, indicating the body had been deliberately processed before being put into the dish. Continuing to examine the soft tissues, the forensics team determined they belonged not to one person, but at least 3 different types of tissue, indicating more than one victim. The expert team proceeded to conduct DNA testing on the collected tissue and bone samples. The results stunned everyone. At least 3 different DNA samples were found in the human flesh. This confirmed that at least 3 victims had been murdered and dismembered. Then parts of their bodies were mixed into the food at the tavern. This was not just an isolated case, but had become a gruesome serial murder case. While forensics analyzed the tissue samples, investigators were compiling a list of young women who had gone missing near the tavern area. In the past 2 months, the results showed 10 missing cases, all young women aged 18 to 25. On this list, one name particularly stood out: Tessa Rivers, 21 years old, missing for days. Notably, her last name matched the letter T in the tattoo on the finger in the food dish. This made police suspect that the tattooed finger belonged to Tessa Rivers. Upon discovering Tessa Rivers' case, police took DNA samples from her parents to compare with the tattooed finger found in the dish. The test results confirmed the tattooed finger indeed belonged to Tessa Rivers, meaning she had been murdered and part of her body had been put into the food at the tavern. However, 2 other victims still remained unidentified. While police were focusing on the murdered victims, they received a new missing person report from the families of 2 young women, Vivian Lane, 20, and Linda Stone, 19. Missing 3 days prior, they were last seen passing by Haidu Tavern. The parents of the 2 girls were very worried as they couldn't contact their daughters. Police immediately took DNA samples from the parents of the 2 missing girls to compare with the samples found in the chicken. The results showed that one of the 3 DNA samples in the chicken matched Vivian Lane, meaning she too had been murdered and her body dismembered. The remaining DNA sample did not match Linda Stone, meaning she was not among the victims whose remains were in the dish. This created a major turning point in the investigation. If Linda Stone's body was not in the dish, where was she? Was she still alive, but being held captive somewhere, or did the culprit have other plans for her? With these new findings, police continued to implement emergency measures. First, retrieving security camera footage around the tavern to find clues about the 2 girls before they disappeared. Second, forming a special task force to search for Linda Stone, as she might still be alive. Third, verifying the identity of the 3rd victim among the DNA samples. And finally, investigating more thoroughly the possibility of a criminal group behind this serial murder. After reviewing all security camera footage around the Haidu Tavern area, police finally discovered a crucial video related to the disappearance of Linda Stone, 19, and Vivian Lane, 20. According to the security camera recording at 10:30 p.m., the 2 girls were walking near the tavern, seemingly on their way home. Shortly after, a small black van approached them. About 5 minutes later, the van suddenly stopped. 2 men in dark clothing wearing gloves quickly got out. They approached the 2 girls from behind, subduing them systematically, not allowing the victims to react. In less than 30 seconds, both girls were forced into the van. The van door slammed shut, and the vehicle sped off immediately because the license plate was obscured. Police initially had difficulty identifying the owner. However, after enhancing the image quality, they noticed the right side door of the van had a long scratch, likely from a collision with a hard object. Part of a decal on the side of the van was peeling off, revealing white paint underneath. These features helped police filter a list of vehicles with similar characteristics in the area, opening a new line of investigation. At the same time, police also questioned the delivery driver responsible for transporting the chicken dish from the processing facility to the tavern. The delivery driver, Connor McRae, 35, was a longtime food delivery employee with no criminal record and a stable job at the company. Initially, he claimed there was nothing unusual during the delivery process. However, when police asked about his specific travel schedule, he began to falter. Finally, he admitted a crucial detail. While on his way to the tavern, he had stopped his van for about 10 to 15 minutes to use the restroom. He stopped at a vacant lot near a deserted road, about 5 kilometers from the tavern. More importantly, he did not lock the van because he thought he would only be gone for a moment. This raised significant suspicion. Could someone have approached the van and put something into the containers? Perhaps the culprit had taken advantage of this time to swap or add something to the dish. Was the unlocked van a coincidence, or had someone been watching and waiting for the opportunity? Recognizing this could be a crucial turning point. Police retrieved surveillance camera footage from the vacant lot area and returned to the scene to search for suspicious traces. After discovering the unlocked van during the time delivery driver Connor McRae was away, police focused on checking security cameras around the vacant lot, where the van had stopped for about 10 to 15 minutes. They reviewed every frame, searching for anyone acting suspiciously during this period. Finally, in a video from a surveillance camera about 20 meters away, police spotted a figure moving towards the van right after the delivery driver left. It was a middle-aged man wearing an old gray jacket, black pants, tall and thin, wearing a baseball cap pulled low to cover his face. He hadn't appeared earlier but walked out from a small alley behind the vacant lot carrying a rather large bag. Initially, he stood at a distance observing, seemingly waiting, when sure no one was around. He approached the van's cargo door, bent down, and appeared to do something with the food containers. He was there for about 5 minutes, then left in the same direction, disappearing into the alley. This behavior was extremely suspicious because that was the only time there was an opportunity to tamper with the cargo without being noticed. Police immediately enlarged the image using facial recognition technology to search their database. After several hours of analysis, they identified the suspect as Lucas Hines, 43, a former chef at the food processing facility where the braised chicken was cooked before being delivered to Haidu Tavern. Lucas Hines had worked at the food processing facility for 5 years before being fired a year ago due to serious conflicts with colleagues. He was described as hot-tempered, rude, prone to causing trouble, and frequently clashing with others in the kitchen, especially when he was a chef. He had a bitter feud with Connor McRae, the delivery driver. The two had once fought in the kitchen when Connor McRae complained about delays in food preparation. Lucas Hines became enraged, cursed, and nearly attacked him. Since then, he had always held a grudge against Connor McRae. After being fired, he had no stable job, and according to some former colleagues, he still occasionally loitered near the industrial park, where his old food processing facility was located. He also had no fixed address, renting cheap rooms in slums, and showing signs of severe financial difficulties. After confirming Lucas Hines' identity, police checked his activity history for the past 2 months and found some suspicious points. He frequently appeared near the vacant lot where the delivery van had stopped, although he had no reason to be there. He had no stable job, living day to day on odd jobs, but still had money to rent a room. About a week ago, he suddenly left his residence. No one knew where he went. The landlord said he carried a large suitcase and didn't specify where he was going. When questioning his acquaintances, police found no one had seen him for a week. All this increased suspicion that he might be directly involved in the case, or knew something important that hadn't been discovered. Recognizing Lucas Hines could be a crucial link in the case, police decided to investigate him further. After days of searching, police finally tracked down Lucas Hines through camera footage and public information. They found he had appeared at a small guest house in the northern suburbs of Guangzhou. The guest house owner said the man behaved suspiciously, rarely interacted with others, only went out at night and returned in the early morning. Notably, he had a long scratch on his arm, like a knife cut. Realizing this could be a significant breakthrough, police quickly organized a siege of the area. When they raided, they found Lucas Hines preparing to leave, carrying a large suitcase, seemingly trying to flee. He was immediately apprehended on the spot, unable to react. At the police station, Lucas Hines initially denied everything, insisting he had no connection to the case. However, when police presented camera evidence, his face began to change. Under the pressure of interrogation, he finally admitted part of the truth. He claimed someone had asked him to dispose of bodies but adamantly refused to reveal their identity. He hadn't killed anyone himself but had participated in disposing of the bodies. He refused to disclose who had killed them, only stating, "I only helped dispose of the bodies. I'm not involved in the killing." When police questioned him about why he swapped the food, he suddenly admitted he had no initial plan to mix human flesh into the food. But when he saw the unlocked delivery van, he decided to seek revenge. He had a deep-seated conflict with Connor McRae, the delivery driver, from years ago. They had a fierce argument that almost led to a fight after being fired from the food processing facility. He always believed Connor McRae was behind his misfortune, so when he had the chance, he put human flesh into the food containers to frame the delivery driver, hoping Connor McRae would be suspected and lose his job. However, when asked about the identity of the person who killed the girls, he remained completely silent, although Lucas Hines refused to reveal anything more. Police had an important clue from his statement. He said the bodies were processed in an abandoned house in the suburbs. It was an old, deserted factory, abandoned for over 5 years, located in the middle of a desolate, uninhabited area. Immediately, a police team organized a raid on the abandoned house. It was pitch black when the special team approached the building. No lights, no sounds, only a heavy atmosphere and a faint stench of decay. When they broke down the door and stormed in, what they saw inside made even the most seasoned investigators shudder. Under the sweep of flashlights across the room, police discovered numerous horrifying signs on the floor. Dried blood formed large, mottled patches on the old concrete. Some bloodstains were scrubbed. Perhaps someone had tried to clean them, but left faint traces. The walls were splattered with blood. In a corner, a wooden table was heavily scratched, its surface bearing deep cuts from a knife or sharp tool. Signs of a heavy object or a sharp instrument used repeatedly. Under the table, police found many large plastic bags, some still blood-stained, containing small bone fragments. In the middle of the room, a large iron barrel sat on the floor. Police opened the lid and recoiled in horror. Inside were 7 human heads, but all had their facial skin removed, exposing white skulls. No eyes, no noses, no skin. Just bare heads, as if the killer deliberately wanted to erase the victims' identities. The necks were cleanly severed, indicating a very sharp cutting tool, possibly a surgical knife or an electric saw. Some heads still had hair, but it was cut short, perhaps to avoid obstruction during processing. This scene horrified everyone, because flaying the face not only aimed to conceal identity, but also showed a level of cruelty far beyond a typical murder. Besides the 7 heads, police continued to search the room and found another metal container filled with bone ash, proving some bodies had been burned to dispose of them. Under a plastic tarp, there were a few scattered body parts, a partially decomposed but shriveled hand, part of a leg bone severed by an electric saw, some small bone fragments mixed with ash and cut ropes nearby. There was also a pot with soup exactly like the herbal braised chicken from the tavern. This was likely where Lucas Hines had cooked the human flesh. Police immediately sealed the scene, taking all samples to the lab for DNA testing. From what they gathered, they made some initial assessments. At least 7 victims were killed in an extremely brutal manner, and there might be more undiscovered. The method of killing was calculated, not a common murder, but showed signs of a ritual or a special motive. The victims' identities could not be immediately determined because all faces were flayed, which could make identification take much longer than usual. Lucas Hines might only be a part of the case, but he still refused to reveal the true mastermind. After collecting all remaining body parts from the abandoned house, the forensics team began to inventory and analyze them in detail. However, a major problem quickly emerged. 7 human heads were found in the abandoned house, but the number of other body parts was too small. Scattered bones, a few hands, some leg bone fragments, but not enough internal organs, flesh, and other body parts. The bone ash in the metal container was also insufficient to account for the complete burning of 7 bodies, proving that many body parts had been disposed of elsewhere. This raised a big question. What did Lucas Hines do with the remaining parts of the victims' bodies? Police began to reconsider his disposal process. Initially, they suspected Lucas Hines had used the method of mixing into food, like the recently discovered case at Haidu Tavern, but when comparing data, an anomaly appeared. If disposing by cooking, the highest chance of error would occur in the first few cases when the killer was not yet adept. But in this case, the crime was only exposed when the latest victims' remains were put into food. proving that he had previously done it very neatly without being detected. So why was there such a blatant mistake that led to exposure? This made police wonder if Lucas Hines had changed his disposal method. If so, how had he disposed of the bodies before? To find clues, police expanded their investigation, searching desolate areas around the abandoned house. After many hours of searching, they discovered a suspicious location 2 kilometers from the abandoned house, a natural cave. Extremely deep, the entrance was quite narrow, but when they shone a light down, they saw it seemed to be a bottomless pit. Using a laser distance measurer, the result showed the cave was too deep to measure its full depth. No one had ever reached the bottom because the terrain was extremely dangerous. Investigators immediately suspected Lucas Hines might have used this place to dispose of bodies. But a question that troubled police even more was, if he had previously used the cave to dispose of bodies, why change the method? Why did he choose to put flesh into food, a blatant and easily detectable disposal method? What had happened that forced him to change his method of disposing of bodies? Police began to form some hypotheses. First, he could no longer use the cave. Perhaps someone had accidentally approached the cave area, making him fear the disposal site would be discovered. Or there was some reason he couldn't continue throwing bodies into the cave, such as an unexpected accident, an environmental change, or someone else had occupied the area. Second, someone had forced him to change the disposal method. Was he under pressure from another force, compelled to use a new disposal method under someone's orders? And if so, who was the mastermind manipulating him? Third, he deliberately wanted to be caught. If he had successfully concealed many murders before, why make such a blatant mistake this time to be discovered? Was he intentionally leaving clues for the police to find something after determining the cave might be the disposal site? For previous victims, police still hadn't found Linda Stone, making them even more worried about her survival. Just then, another investigation team, after days of tracking the kidnapping vehicle, finally made a significant breakthrough. Initially, police faced many difficulties in identifying the owner of the small van because the license plate was obscured and the vehicle seemed to have no valid registration. But after carefully checking the traffic camera system, they discovered a crucial video from a camera in an industrial park not far from the tavern. In the video, a small van with a long scratch on the right door matched the description of the kidnapping vehicle. Based on identification data from the camera, police found a list of vehicles with similar characteristics. After many eliminations, they discovered the vehicle was registered under the name of a man living in the suburbs. His name was Tony King, 46, a man with a long criminal history, previously involved in illegal activities related to kidnapping and human trafficking. Tony King used to be a truck driver for hire, but was found to be involved in a female trafficking ring. In 2000, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for kidnapping and extortion, but due to lack of evidence, he was not prosecuted for other missing person cases. After his release, he disappeared from the official system, having no stable residential address, frequently moving between suburban areas and deserted industrial zones. Police traced his financial records and found he owned a small house in a sparsely populated suburban area. Suspecting Linda Stone might be held captive there, police immediately organized a raid, dispatching a special task force to the man's house. It was a small, isolated house in the suburbs, with very few neighbors, making it an ideal place to detain someone without being noticed. Upon arrival, police noticed the front door was locked from the inside. Without hesitation, they broke down the door and stormed in, and immediately, a horrifying scene unfolded before their eyes. On the floor in the middle of the living room, a woman lay motionless, showing no signs of life. Her hands and feet were tied tightly, her body covered in bruises, indicating she had been brutally tortured before death. Her clothes were torn, her body severely emaciated, showing signs of being starved for days. But the most terrifying thing was that her face had been completely flayed, exposing the white bone underneath, just like the heads found in the abandoned house. Continuing to search the house, a police officer discovered a faint sound coming from a large wardrobe in the bedroom. They opened the wardrobe and were stunned to see another girl tied up inside. Her mouth gagged with tape. She was still alive, her eyes filled with terror. Police immediately cut her restraints, helped her out, and quickly took her to the hospital. Upon checking her identity, police found that the girl locked in the wardrobe was not on the list of recent missing persons. She was not one of the previously known victims, so why was she being held? What did the culprit want? With her, could there be more undiscovered victims? Although they rescued the girl, the house was completely empty, with no trace of the owner. He had disappeared before the police arrived after rescuing the surviving girl from the wardrobe. Police quickly took her to the hospital and also interrogated her to learn what had happened inside that house of horrors. Through identity verification, the girl who died and had her face flayed was Linda Stone. The rescued girl was named Sarah Vance, 22, a final-year student at Guangzhou University, missing for about 3 weeks, but no one had reported her missing. When asked why no one reported her disappearance, Sarah Vance was silent for a moment, then said her family didn't live there. She was independent, so no one knew she was gone. She said she was kidnapped on her way home late one evening. Unable to react, when she woke up, she was tied up and locked in that house, completely unaware of where she was or who had kidnapped her initially. Sarah Vance appeared panicked, trembling as she recounted her ordeal. She said she had been locked in the wardrobe from the beginning, never saw the kidnapper, only heard footsteps each night. She didn't know how many people were in the house, only heard some strange sounds, sometimes moans, sometimes something being dragged across the floor. When police asked about Linda Stone, she didn't answer immediately, but looked down, clenching her hands. After a moment, she said she knew nothing about her. The investigating officer noticed something was wrong with her testimony. If she was truly locked up the whole time, why didn't she show signs of severe emaciation like Linda Stone? When asked about her feelings in the house, she didn't talk about fear, but repeated a vague statement. "I heard things I shouldn't have heard." An investigator felt something was very strange about her, but lacked enough evidence to detain her. After checking and finding no clear evidence linking Sarah Vance to the case, police decided to release her, but kept her under surveillance. When she left the police station, she didn't seem happy or relieved, but just looked at the ground, her eyes distant and strange. Something was wrong with this girl, but police couldn't explain it. They only knew one thing: she wasn't as simple as she claimed. Just a few days after releasing Sarah Vance, police finally tracked down Tony King, the owner of the van and the prime suspect in the kidnapping and murder of Linda Stone. A gas station attendant on the roadside reported to police that a black car had been parked there since the previous night, but no one had gotten out. From a distance, the attendant felt something was unusual because the car window was partially down, but there was no movement inside. Police immediately went to the scene, surrounded the car, and checked inside. When they opened the door, everyone was stunned. In the driver's seat, Tony King was dead, his body slumped to one side, head lolling against the steering wheel. His neck had a deep cut, congealed blood indicating he had been dead for at least 6 to 8 hours. A bloody knife lay on the dashboard, as if he had slit his own throat. There were no signs of a struggle, no traces of anyone else in the car. Everything looked like a perfect suicide. However, upon closer examination, they discovered an unusual detail. The mini fridge installed in the car was missing, but the electrical wires were still there, indicating it had been recently removed. A few long black hairs were stuck in a plastic crevice near where the mini fridge had been. The cut on Tony King's neck didn't look like a self-inflicted wound, but rather as if someone had restrained him and cut him precisely. Most surprisingly, he died right after Sarah Vance was released. Noticing Tony King's death was too coincidental, police began to suspect this wasn't a suicide, but a staged murder. Why did he die right after Sarah Vance was released? And if he committed suicide, where was the mini fridge? Why were there no signs of a struggle? Could he have been subdued before death? After discovering Tony King's suspicious death, police decided to secretly test the DNA of the hair found stuck in the plastic crevice near the missing mini fridge in his car. The results stunned everyone. The hair did not belong to Tony King, nor to any confirmed victim. It was Sarah Vance's hair. The presence of Sarah Vance's hair in Tony King's car right before his death was not a mere coincidence. Police immediately realized Sarah Vance was definitely connected to Tony King's death. She was not just a kidnapped victim, she could be the mastermind. And had she killed Tony King to silence him, then staged it as a suicide, and perhaps the mini fridge was taken by Sarah Vance. With these clear suspicions, police decided to secretly search Sarah Vance's home. What they found shocked everyone. In a large freezer, they found an object wrapped in cloth. When unwrapped, police were horrified to realize it was Linda Stone's facial skin. It had been treated with a preservative solution, showing no strong signs of decomposition, indicating it was kept for some purpose. In her room, police found old notebooks recording ancient remedies for eternal youth, eternal beauty, and bizarre rituals involving human skin. At this point, police knew they had found the true mastermind. Sarah Vance was not a victim. She was the one controlling the entire case. Police immediately arrested Sarah Vance when she returned home. Initially, she remained calm, even feigning innocence. But when police presented irrefutable evidence, her expression immediately changed. Yet she adamantly refused to reveal any information. At this point, police were forced to bring Lucas Hines to the interrogation room with her. Upon seeing Lucas Hines, Sarah Vance showed genuine panic for the first time. She stared at him, her lips trembling, slightly as if trying to hide something. Lucas Hines also lost his composure, his eyes filled with conflict and pain. Now, police knew they had reached the truth. Under immense pressure from the evidence and Lucas Hines' presence, Sarah Vance finally confessed everything. Sarah Vance was not just a victim. She was the mastermind behind it all, a person morbidly obsessed with beauty and youth. She believed in an ancient method to keep herself forever young, and the secret lay in the facial skin of young girls. But she couldn't commit the crimes alone. She needed someone to kidnap victims, someone to dispose of the bodies. As expected, she found not just one accomplice, but two men blinded by their love for her. Tony King, the man with a history of kidnapping women, was also Sarah Vance's former neighbor. After his release from prison, he accidentally met her again, and like a moth to a flame, he quickly fell into a love trap with the girl he had secretly admired for a long time. Noticing this, Sarah Vance began to exploit him, subtly suggesting she needed something to maintain her beauty. She didn't have to be direct. Just promising a future with him was enough for Tony King to do anything. Lucas Hines was not a cold-blooded killer from the start. He was rude, hot-tempered, but not a murderer. In the past, he had met Sarah Vance when he was injured, and she helped him. That small act made him feel grateful and develop feelings for her. When Sarah Vance realized he also had feelings for her, she orchestrated a perfect play. She pretended to be kidnapped by Tony King, constantly crying and begging for help. Lucas Hines saw her being tormented, threatened, which drove him mad with the desire to protect her. Tony King began forcing him to dispose of bodies, threatening to kill Sarah Vance if he didn't comply. Lucas Hines didn't want to kill, but he had no choice. He did everything to save Sarah Vance. He hid bodies, disposed of evidence, and followed all of Tony King's instructions. But he never suspected he was just a puppet controlled from start to finish. Before Linda Stone was kidnapped, during a quiet visit to the abandoned house, Lucas Hines witnessed the most horrifying moment of his life. He saw Sarah Vance carefully flaying the face of a young girl. Her face at that moment was no longer that of a weak person needing protection, but the face of a cold-blooded killer. Her hands didn't tremble. Instead, there was a meticulousness, a skill, as if she had done this many times before. At that moment, Lucas Hines understood. It wasn't Tony King forcing her. She was the one controlling everything. No one threatened her. She was the one creating it all. But he couldn't report her. He was in too deep. He had done too many wrong things for her. He loved her, and therefore, he couldn't betray her. He was in pain but didn't know what to do. After that moment, Lucas Hines began to change his method of disposing of bodies. He no longer followed Sarah Vance's requests perfectly. He deliberately left traces, a subtle warning that she had to stop. He hoped she would understand he knew everything, and if she continued, One day the police would find out, but Sarah Vance was not afraid. She knew he loved her too much and would definitely not dare to expose her. And this silence pushed the case to an inevitable conclusion when the police gradually found clues. Tony King knew he couldn't escape, but he still wanted to find a way out. He wanted to flee the city, but Sarah Vance found him first. He had begun to suspect her, but he still loved her, and that was his fatal mistake. She met him, cried, hugged him, said she would run away with him. He softened, completely trusted her, and let her get in the car with him. Then, while they were intimate, she suddenly took a sharp knife and cut his throat. Then she placed the knife on the dashboard to make everything look like a perfect suicide. Finally, she took the mini fridge containing the most important evidence. After leaving, she pretended nothing had happened, but the police had already begun to suspect. And when they found Linda Stone's facial skin in her house, all the final pieces of the puzzle fit together. The police knew they had caught the real demon of this case after the whole truth was exposed. The trial of Sarah Vance and Lucas Hines quickly became a sensational case, attracting the attention not only of the press, but also of experts in criminal psychology. After many hours of trial, Sarah Vance was sentenced to death, while Lucas Hines received a life sentence without parole. What are your thoughts on this case? Please leave your comments below for us to know. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support future videos.